Ah, yes, that blue demonstration slide. But we know these demonstrations really are hands-on experience for you. It's this hands-on experience that is going to be your lasting knowledge provider. So we're going to be taking a look at understanding the default DNS by listing our listening ports and then testing our DNS name resolution using DIG and seeing which server is being used. Of course, it's going to be our local server to begin with. We're going to be able to configure our own name servers and then test our name resolution is actually coming from those name servers. Come on, join me at the command line. Now, what could be better than this? Ubuntu 2 in its full glory. Glory, where we're going to be able to show you the default DNS configuration from both the server and client perspective. We can begin by using sudo and ss. -ntl will show us our listening TCP ports. Adding the option P will show us the process that's behind the listening ports. But we can also go through and include the option U to look at listening UDP ports. When we hit the big enter key, we're able to see that we're listening on both UDP and TCP to port 53, our DNS server. But look at the IP address as well, 127.0.0.53. Now that is okay, it's still just a local loopback address. And behind it, we have the systemd resolve daemon sitting behind our DNS server. Now that also manages our resolve.conf. If we take a look at this, so cat/etc resolve.conf, we can see that we are configured to look at the local name server by default, so 127.0.0.53. But there are a symbolic link, and we can list that using ls-l. And when we look at the resolve.conf, it's a symbolic link to the stub.resolve.conf. But there are different configurations that the systemd resolved can use, and we'll come across that as we go through. Another way to see our configuration of our DNS is looking at the resolvectl command. If I just run resolvectl, it's the same as resolvectl status. And when we navigate to the bottom, we can see our current DNS servers is 10.0.2.3. Now, that's not what we're seeing on our resolve.conf, but this is set via netplan, and netplan writes to a different linked file. We're going to see this, but first of all, we're going to test where we're actually resolving to using the dig command. And when we take a look at the output, we can see that we truly are resolving to our 127.0.0.53 server. Now that's okay, it works by default, but if we want to point to a different DNS server, we're going to have to know how we can change this. Our starting point is going to be netplan. And we can go through into our netplan configuration to make sure that we override our DNS settings. Next up, we're going to need to change where our etc and resolve.conf is linked to. So we're going to begin by using sudo and vim, but remember, you can always use any text editor that you want. And we're going to point through to our netplan file, so etc and netplan. And for the Vagrant machine that I'm looking at, we need to look at the DHCP interface that is coming from 50 cloud-init.yaml. If you're using a different system, it might be a different file that you have to go through. But we're looking to the interface that is configured with DHCP. As we move our way down, we can go through and see our DHCP4 line. But before I put anything in, I'm just going to change the Vim settings so it works better with the YAML that we're looking at. So I'm going to hit escape and then colon. Look in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see then that I'm setting the tab stop to be 2 spaces. I think by default it will be 8. And the shift width is also going to be 2. Shift width is used by our auto indent. With that done, I can then use uppercase A to append to the end of the line, return, and you can see then that I'm lined up nicely with my DHCP v4, and I'm going to put a new key, DHCP4 overrides. This isn't going to have a value directly, so it's going to be a dictionary, a list of key value pairs, and we're going to put it in use DNS and false. Now we're finished now with this dictionary, so we can make sure that we move back to the D of DHCP and the M of match, and then we can start configuring our own name server entries. So name servers and colon. We can have a list of addresses. Now, there are different ways that we can write lists, but if I've got multiple values to a list, I'm normally going to add them in on separate lines. So indented in -8.8.8 and -8.8.4.4. This is a YAML file, so make sure that we're using the correct indent levels. Also, within our name servers key, we can put our search domain. The search domain is also going to be a list, but in this case, we're only going to have one item in the list. So I can show you another way that YAML will support lists. If it's only a single item, I would write it on this way with a square bracket and then our list items inside of the square brackets. If you are using multiple items, just separate them with a comma. I'm only putting the one item in, so I can just close the list straight away with the right square brackets. But that's all of our modifications done, so we can go through and save our changes. And then, of course, we need to run our sudo and netplan and apply. Now, of course, this will have happened, but if I go through and look at the etc and resolve.conf, as we saw before, it's not picking up on our netplan configuration. It didn't before, and it's still not going to pick up on our netplan configuration. So we need to look at resolve.ctl, and we can see that we've got the correct configuration now for our DNS servers and our DNS domain, but it's just not showing in our etc and resolve.conf. And that, if you remember, relates to the way it's linked. So if I use sudo and ln -s, as you probably know, is for symbolic links, but we can use F for force. So where we are linking from, so the etc resolve.conf, if it exists, we can replace it. And we want to set our link target where we're pointing to /run, systemd, and resolve. And then when I do a double tab in here, we can see the matches. So we've got our resolve.conf and stub-resolve.conf. We want to go to the resolve.conf now, rather than just the stub. And we can then link it to etc and resolve.conf. Now, when I go through and use cat and escape and dot, we're able to see the content looks correct now. But our real test is going to be running dig. And when we look at the server that we're responding from, we can see then that it's 8.8.8.8. So exactly as we need.